5. My home, where Jarvis Reddick, who's hiding out here somewhere, is our post commander and tries to keep us all straight, which is a full-time job. If you've ever tried herding cats, you have some idea what we do. Today and every day, we ought to be celebrating the gift that veterans give us in terms of the freedom we enjoy. We take it all for granted, all too often. But on at least a day of the year, we take the time to really give them the honor they are due and the respect and time that we should give every day. We have great affection and respect for the men and women who have worn the cloth of the United States military service. And because of the work they have done and because of the work they continue to do, we still live in a land that is free, open, with the opportunity to be whatever it is our intellect and genius and, in my case, shortcomings can make us. This is a celebration, a breakfast, both here and with a lot of folks joining us virtually, to begin our, I won't say Veterans Day, our Veterans Day season celebration, because it ought to be a season. We are going to receive greetings from a good friend of mine, a good friend of this post, and a good friend of Veterans Everywhere. He is the co-founder and chairman of the board of Arizona, an organization which has become a vital link and part of providing services to veterans in this state. He is also a veteran of the United States Army and a man whose ability and genius may actually be larger than he is. My good friend and our good friend, Alan A.P. Powell, the chairman of Arizona.
I just want to thank everybody for getting up this morning to come to a much-needed conversation. I see a lot of people in the audience. This was a conversation started by me and Commander Hayden, Angel Juarez, about the state adjutant, about how could we talk about Afghanistan and how could we talk about our veterans and doing something special for them and having a conversation that's about mental health. It's trying times in America, but a lot of people always say, thanks for your service. But a lot of people don't understand what that really means unless you really served in the military, or you a family member of someone served in the military, or a kid of someone served in the military. It's an ultimate sacrifice when you're fighting for your country, but it's also the ultimate sacrifice when you come back home to your country. So we just want to make sure that we really respect Veterans Day, because I think Veterans Day should be 365 days a year, not one weekend. Me and Colonel talk about that all the time. It's great that we talk about these things, but a lot of people don't know a lot about the American Legion. The American Legion is the largest military organization in the country. They have over 9,000 posts around the United States. The American Legion wrote the GI Bill. So, you know, the American Legion stepped up on this event, and I just want to say thank you all once again for really coming up here today. And I want to thank my significant other, Tasia Flanagan, who works for the VA, and now she understands what it really means too, because she works in a caregivers program, home caregivers program. So once again, I want to thank my commander, Jarvis Reddick. I want to thank our adjutant, Felice Winbush, who makes sure she disseminates the information out to all our veterans. We have over 900 members at this post. Once again, we appreciate all our sponsors, APS, Andrew and Amy Cohen, you know, Colonel Wright, with Arizona Department of Veteran Services, and we would just want to thank you all because it's really appreciated. God bless you all. God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, AP. You can see how difficult it can be to get him and me in the same shot with the camera, but that's okay. We have as always, when we have these programs, we always have an invocation. I think it's important to call upon a force bigger than ourselves, larger than ourselves, to bring blessings upon this gathering in this house that we reside in this morning. We are going to be honored with the invocation by Chaplain Christopher Melvin, of the United States Army, National Guard. And after he has blessed us with an invocation, we will then receive the Pledge of Allegiance, the National Anthem first, and the Pledge of Allegiance from Ron Williams. Now, if you know Ron has a voice from heaven. despite the fact that he is always complaining about being a veteran of the United States Air Force, which he maintains does not get its proper respect. So today, we will not only listen to him sing and lead us in the pledge, but remember, fly high with the Air Force. Ron Williams will appreciate it. But first, our chaplain, Christopher Melvin, United States Army National Guard. Chaplain, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to invite you to pray with me. Father of the nations, God of all, Lord Almighty, as the psalmist has said centuries ago, would you unite our hearts to fear your name in these moments? Help us to see, O Lord, to see with clarity the pieces of goodness from the complexities of our efforts. Some of us up close and personal, and some of us from afar. May we follow you as agents of grace and forgiveness where we see or we feel betrayals, whether from a national level or down to the individual. Would you comfort the hearts of those who gave some, those of us here today alive who lost those we love as they gave all? Meet with us now as we seek to understand, and, Lord, as we move toward being understood. Thank you for the food, and thank you for this gathering. Lord, I ask all these things in the name of our Creator, Sustainer, and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
The flag. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir. Ron, thank you. Please be seated. We are blessed to have a number of individuals who are going to bring special greetings. I want to make sure that I'm really particularly nice to the first political figure here, because while he comes home as often as he can, this time he came with a very huge bag of money, and we are grateful. Ruben Gallego is not only our congressman, but as he reminds me all the time, he is a United States Marine. And they cut a different, they are ahead. Congressman Gallego is simply somebody who continues to give, and we are honored, sir, that you could find time to leave that place on the Potomac and come home to where we love you and welcome you. Congressman, please.
Well, it also helps that I only live about 1 mile down that way. So if you're going to make anything convenient, this is convenient. But thank you for this amazing post, for always hosting events like this. it's really hard to, at least for me, to talk on Veterans Day just because, it is a part of my life that I still can't imagine, or I still can't believe that I did. I was very lucky in the sense that I was born in this country. My parents came from Mexico and Colombia, and we left some very hard situations over there. And then to come here and to be able to repay my country by serving was a lifelong dream of mine. And every Veterans Day, my sisters will call and text me, "Thanks for all you did." I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm a veteran." I forget. But it is a good conversation we're having today because talking about even the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I certainly had a lot of flashbacks from my service in Iraq, and I think a lot of us that suffer from PTSD, like I do, had some really hard moments seeing what was happening that day, including the 13 men and women that died trying to evacuate as many people as possible. So having these ongoing conversations really does matter. The one thing I think that we are getting better at, especially the American Legion has been extremely helpful at it, is that we need to start looking, or we have to continue looking at veterans holistically, right? We can't just take care of them in terms of VA and mental health, which I think we should, but we also have to make sure that they can have steady housing, make sure that they're getting and using the VA home loan, make sure that they're getting a job and a career they could grow in and be proud of, and they could, sustain themselves and their families. Because I know when I got back from Iraq, I remember, well, actually, the post-41 guys would remember this. I was hanging out the Legion a little too much for the first 6 months because I just wasn't actually mentally, in the space to actually get a job. And luckily, the post-41 guys were, trying to help me up with interviews and stuff like that to kind of get me on my way. But a lot of my friends that I served with had the same problem. Either we couldn't get a job because we were just really suffering still from PTSD or just being back from the war, or we were just mismatched in terms of our skill set. And having that job, having that stability, having the pride of waking up and going to work every day, providing for your family, matters. It matters just as much to anyone else's mental health care, but especially to veterans, right? We live for so many years with a purpose, and then when you suddenly leave your service, it's hard when you don't have a secondary purpose, which is great that we have organizations like American Legion because it's a great way to, segue our purpose into something every day. And, it's great that, there are organizations like Arizona Foundation that are consistently talking about that. So thank you, all the panelists, for being here. And by the way, in case the Ethics Committee is watching, when he meant the big bag of cash, he meant the infrastructure deal. FBI, in case you're wondering. You're going to get me in trouble one of these days, I swear to God. You think that? And we got some streaming here. Thank you. Thank you so much again for everyone and to all our veterans, and especially to my Marine Corps veterans. Semper Fi.
I don't care what the FBI thinks, it's a big bag of money. Our next person bringing greetings is who represents this area in the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors now. Steve Gallardo, who is our supervisor, is here so often, many people have come to believe he is actually a member of the post, which he may very well be. But he has been a friend. He comes out of the legislature, but he overcame that handicap, which I have, to become one of the really outstanding leaders in our community, somebody who's always giving, always here, always ready to help. And we are honored to have him here this morning, the Honorable Steve Gallardo, our member of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. A little handshake. The politicians, you got to trust them, guys.
Find me a little one and I'll hug him and hold him as well. That's what politicians do. Isn't that right, Mr. Hamilton?
Absolutely, sir.
Yes, thank you, Post 65. I appreciate it so much. Always the invitations, always the greetings, always doing wonderful work to support your fellow veterans, but also supporting the communities. I saw the little handout, the flyer there for the Thanksgiving Day distribution, which once again continuing to help our neighborhoods and our families across the valley. So thank you so much. The congressman, did he step out? Thank you. There, did he step out? Oh, he's talking back there. But yeah, couldn't be more excited with the infrastructure bill coming through. Helps us all, as well as not only the infrastructure, it's many of the bills that have come in to help us get the economy going, be able to help our neighborhoods, our veterans, particularly during this whole pandemic. Millions of dollars being distributed, not only in the state, the county, but the city level, to really help get people back into work, getting back people into homes, helping with behavioral health and mental health. We just put aside $20 million to help with mental health issues for our veterans as well. We just did that a couple weeks ago. So all that work that Congressman Gallegos and many of the other members of our congressional delegation in Arizona and across the country have done has just been so much appreciative. I'm not a veteran, folks. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a veteran. I look to you all to help guide me in many of my policy issues. We need to be educated. We need to continue to be educated. I think AP mentioned that Veterans Day should be every day, should be a constant reminder that we need to continue to look, as the Congressman said, holistically. How do we help? If there is a veteran out there that is homeless, we should do everything we can to put it into it. How do we stop any veteran or anyone from being homeless? If there is someone in the verge of losing their home, how do we stop it? How do we keep them in their home? If we have kids that are going to school without eating, how do we stop that? How do we make sure that these kids that are going to school have every instrument needed in order to be successful in a classroom? How do we address the challenges outside the classroom in their neighborhoods? These are the challenges that we all need to work together. And so when it comes to particularly veteran issues, that's where I turn to you all. When I turn to all my legions to say, hey, what is it that we can do as policymakers to address some of the challenges that many of the veterans face? I couldn't be more excited to be in any post, to be able to talk to veterans, to sit down and have breakfast and engage and have these discussions, because that makes me not only a better policymaker, but a better American for the most part, to really understand all the needs. And that's why Post 65 and the work to bring everyone together, have these types of breakfasts are so important. And that's why I totally agree with you, AP. Let's have Veterans Day every day of the year. Let's continue to have these dialogues. The one thing I do want to say, and I'm not trying to get political, Mr. Hamilton, but one of the things that we continue to thank our veterans is they have definitely gave the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedoms and our liberty, but also our democracy. And over the last year, and you all seen in the news, it's just a lot of headlines after headlines on the 2020 election. And regardless of what side you're on politically, regardless, the end of the day, I think the one thing that we can all agree on is the importance of protecting our democracy. That is what America is about. And I would hope everyone would join us to be able to say, we can do an election that is fair, secure, and accurate. And we will do everything we can to allow every American the right, the most fundamental right, to exercise their right to vote. And that's what veterans have fought for year after year, protecting our liberty, our freedom, and our democracy. Thank you, all of you, for everything you have done, the ultimate sacrifice. God bless you. Once again, thank you, AP. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for the invite.
Thank you, Steve. Our next presenter is actually the junior member of these elected officials. But being the junior member has not stopped him from being one of the best. He serves as our Phoenix City Council person, where he aggressively and forcefully carries our water on the City Council and also brings home goodies for the folks in District 8. We are deeply appreciative for his service, and he also now not only serves as our councilman, he is the current vice mayor of the City of Phoenix, the Honorable Carlos Garcia. Councilman. Be nice to him. He's doing great things for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here and having this great morning, this great breakfast, this conversation. Looking forward to listening to how we can support as a city. My path to being an elected official came through the social justice movement. And I was a history major while I was at school. And studying both civil rights leader, some of the folks that, from here, from home, a lot of what happened during the social justice movement was veterans coming home. Because even though we all say, thank you to veterans, once that uniform comes on, here on the south side or the west side, folks are still black and brown and have to deal with the same conditions that they dealt with before they left, and they're coming home. And so I think today this conversation of mental health and conversation of how we really support each other has a lot of intersections. It's mental health, it's race, it's class, and we need to acknowledge all these things and how they intersect with each other, and more importantly, how they impact people and how we can support folks. And so I think many of you all in elected office that led for us, or the shoulders that we're standing on, showed us that being critical of national, state, local decisions does not mean you're throwing people away or those that were impacted. And so I think at times, even when I'm at odds with our police department folks here, we have those conversations that we're trying to make things better, that we're trying to actually support each other, and understanding we're wearing a uniform, whether it's PD or those of you all that have served, you're sacrificing something. And that it's our job as policymakers to make sure we're taking care of you while you're doing that sacrifice and when you're done with it. So thank you all. Looking forward to the panel and listening and putting into action how we can support. So thank you all again, AP, everyone here, and excited for the panel.
Councilman, thank you. Our next speaker, by his very presence, pays a high honor to this post on this Veterans Day celebratory season breakfast. Our esteemed honored guest is the commander of the American Legion Department of Arizona and the United States Air Force, veteran. Please welcome Commander Benjamin Hayden. He told me to say it with a little bit of a drawl. Little southern drawl. Bless you, sir.
Good morning. As I was saying, say it with a little southern drawl. That's been Hayden. There we go. Thank you. Wow. Following all these great speakers and beautiful, beautiful benediction and song from my fellow Air Force veteran, thank you very much. American Legion family members, friends, and our distinguished quick guests. Welcome to the American Legion. Travis Williams, Post 65. Veterans Day is just 2 days away. We should always take this opportunity to remember that Veterans Day is not only to remember those who have died in service to our country, but also to recognize those who continue to serve today. There are approximately over 23.2 million military veterans in the United States. Arizona is the 13th largest population of veterans amongst them. There's been an undue amount of stress foisted upon us, our nations, in the past few months. We have seen the Taliban retake Afghanistan as the remaining U.S. troops withdrew. The speed of the Taliban's resurgence made it even more shocking. It also rekindled memories to our veterans, especially our veterans from Vietnam, who saw similar occurrences. Those who served in Afghanistan have been, and in many cases still are, concerned about the fate of their beloved interpreters and other allies who helped U.S. troops. And as a nation, we are collectively mourned once again, just coming off of the September 11th memorial terrorist attacks on our soil. The pain still lingers 20 years after those attacks. For veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, these events can be upsetting. It is no secret that the veteran suicide rate is outrageously high, estimated at about 20 or more per day. I believe that even one veteran lost to suicide in a day is too many. While we should be working at preventing suicide every day, every week, and every month of the year, we need to remind everyone that we do have resources available. And some of those, not all of them, but some of those are like the American Legion Buddy Check. While these originally intended for twice annually check-ins with veterans, it's a tool that can be used any day. Check on your fellow brethren, sister, in the community. There's no better time than now. A simple call, a visit, will surely brighten a veteran's day. Even invite a veteran to your post. As our congressman stated, going to post 41 6 months or so before he got lifted and put back into the community where he needed to be. That's a buddy check. Doing that will brighten a veteran's day. We have our peer-to-peer network that is unmatched. To walk into a place and sit down and talk to a brother, a sister, about what you're dealing with and what they are dealing with, there's nothing can beat that. We have the VA crisis line, confidential service available 24 hours a day, just by calling 800-273-8255, press the number 1. Or you can text it to 838255 also. We have our Be Connected program that was started here in Arizona, connecting service members and veterans' families and helpers with information and support and resources. That number being 1-866-429-8387. Those are just a few that are out there. There are many, many more. Whether you are a veteran, current service member, family member, or other supporter, we can make a difference working together. Get to know the warning signs and act swiftly. If we all work together as one team with one goal, having one heart and one soul, to shine a light during a veteran's darkest moments, we can and we will reduce the alarming rate of suicides. Thank you for what you do every day for our nation, our members, and our communities in which we serve. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
If we might, let's have another round of applause for our state commander. Very wonderful message. Well, the reason we are really here, beyond having a chance to hear some people let us know that they want to be a part of this, is that we are going to have a panel discussion talking about mental health services, and simply letting people know of all the things that are available that are being offered. Never enough, but certainly far, far more than most people recognize. Mr. Powell, in his infinite wisdom, understood that I was not the person to lead this panel, because with mental health issues, I'm probably more somebody who needs the service than who can talk about it. At least Alan's told me that. Trojanowski is going to do the moderating. He is an assistant vice president at Arizona State University, the only real university in this state.
Oh my God, here we go. Wow.
He said, because he no longer runs for office. And he is also a veteran of the United States Army, a man who not only has served us there, but continues to serve every day as so many veterans do. And so we will now have our panel discussion led by Drew Trojanowski. Sir, it is all yours. The panel belongs to you. Thank you, Drew.
Good morning, everybody. And so, let me just talk for a second like this, because I seem to be louder than the microphone, if that's all right. Just a quick way of background too. One, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to Post 65. Thank you to Aaron, to AP, to Art, to Arizona, and everybody here. And it's an important conversation, especially as we're leading into Veterans Day. I hate holding it, though. All right. So, and just to a quick way of background, I'll introduce myself and then ask the panelists to introduce themselves as well. But my path to get here was I served in the U.S. Army, deploying both to Iraq and to Afghanistan. And when I came back to Arizona, my home, in 2013, I had gone to the VA, and it was a challenge, to say the least. And I was on a small team. There was 12 of us, and within the first, 2 years of everybody coming back, we lost 3 people on a 12-man team post-deployment, suicide, overdose, things like that. And so it became this challenge where I didn't understand how we couldn't do better. And it set me on a path to figure out how can we do better, which then landed me working for Senator McCain in his office. And I got a chance to meet some of the panelists that are up here now, and went to DC. And then I went, and by happenstance, was able to work in the administration and work on veteran policy. And so all I would ever do is advocate about what Arizona is doing and how everybody in the state is working as hard as they can and leaning forward. And I was able to stand on the shoulder of titans to explain the prowess, the power, the amazingness that Arizona is doing in this critical, challenging fight that we have. And so I wanted to, one, just give you guys that quick background on myself and explain that this is an important conversation. Arizona is leading this conversation in a lot of ways. But then also want to turn over to the panelists to quickly introduce themselves so we can get into a series of questions. And with that, Wanda.
Okay, it's on. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here with you today. I'm a 26-year retiree Air Force. Thank you very much. And I loved every day of it. I am the director for the Arizona Department of Veterans Services. Governor Ducey appointed me almost 7 years ago. I can't believe the time that's passed. And I love it. I want to stay here forever. And I'm thankful to be on this panel because I think today is a really good day for outreach and education.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Cara Crist. I am the current Chief Medical Officer at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona, but previously I was the Director of the Arizona Department of Health Services. One of the key things that we were working on as a priority in our Arizona Health Improvement Plan was mental well-being and mental health and trying to connect people to services. So thank you for letting me join you today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the other panelists.
Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas Winkle. I am the director of the Arizona Coalition for Military Families. Lots of wonderful faces here. Happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
You forgot you're a Marine. Which is surprising.
Oh, yeah. Well, no one ever said Marines were that smart.
He said it.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Shiloh Catlett. I am a licensed clinical social worker at the Phoenix VA. Good morning. And the program that I'm with, I'm actually the program manager for the post 9/11 military to VA case management program. Very long name, but back in 2003 was the OEF, OIF, OND post-deployment clinic.
I have my own mic. Good morning, everyone. My name is Edmond Baker. I'm a medical doctor. I'm the current medical director at Equality Health. I am also an Army veteran. Absolutely. And I became a doctor because of how I grew up and the lack of access to medical care. So with me, I bring the think outside the box mentality to fix problems that we'll be talking about today, and I'll be glad to share with you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all the panelists. And so with that, the first question, I'm going to turn over to Wanda and just ask, how will employers, foundations, and community stakeholders be able to support this mental health issue?
So mental health is also public health, and it is a public health issue in my mind. And in order to have community stakeholders be a part of this, I kind of wrote down a little bit of a list, and I'll kind of go through it quickly because we don't have a whole lot of time. But one of the main things, I think, is to create community partnerships. we as a state are networked very tightly between nonprofits, governments, and businesses. And I think it's really important that all of them work together to focus on mental health. We have our Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family, which is out there working with churches. The Department of Housing works with the Arizona Housing Coalition for homeless veterans and homeless citizens of Arizona. Our department works with the Arizona Coalition for Military Families. We have state and federal partnerships, Council of Government with state partnerships, and nonprofit with government partnerships. Those are very, very important to get these conversations going. It's also important, I think, for stakeholders to support legislation. We need to start incentivizing mental health care providers. We don't have enough of them anywhere, not only in the VA, but anywhere. And so we have to do something to create more of them. We need to be able to develop, implement, and evaluate communication efforts. Not everybody understands that they are eligible for VA benefits or even state benefits. We need to get out there and make sure that every veteran is touched so they understand what is out there for them. We talked about the home loan. We talked about food instability. There's several social determinants of health that we can address if we can educate people about them. We need to improve lethal means safety. I'll give some statistics later, but the preponderance of death by suicide is by weapons. And we need to help people understand how to make a diversion so there's thought that happens before we pick up a weapon. We need to work on facilitating care transitions when someone comes out of the hospital from a suicide attempt or ideations. How do we care for them after? That really has to be worked on. Addressing upstream risk and protective factors. We're going to talk about our Be Connected program during this. That is one way to do that. Increase to access to delivery of care. We need to enroll more veterans in the VA, and we need to help those that can enroll in the VA find the right alternatives for them. And then, of course, research, data sharing, and evaluation. We need to be able to share amongst all of the collaboratives data so we can help each other figure out how to work on mental health. Thank you.
No, it's appreciated, and just to point out too, as you can see, all of these things are completely accurate. But this is a Sisyphean rock, right? Like this is a lot to be able to accomplish to get this done. So it's not just as simple as a binary choice, yes or no. But on that, I'm going to turn to Dr. Crist and just ask, how do we improve prevention programs and improve accessibility to mental health services? To dovetail onto that.
So there's a lot of different things that we can do, both at an individual level and at a community population health level. One of the most important things that I think COVID-19 has brought out is that need for connectedness. Start a conversation with somebody. Know how to recognize the signs of somebody who is not having mental wellness. There are programs. I don't know how many of you are trained in CPR. Well, there is a lot of us, right? Because if somebody has a heart attack, we want to be able to help. There's mental health first aid, which is the CPR for mental health. Anybody can enroll and take that, and it gives you tools just like responding to a heart attack to help people get them to the care that they need and to make sure that they continue into that so that we can bring down that initial event. The other thing that we need to do is we really need to expand our mental health workforce. So Arizona is a mental health provider shortage area. The whole state, we don't have enough. So looking at programs that expand our behavioral health professionals population, such as the student loan repayment program. Arizona just a couple of years ago increased the ability for us not to only give to doctors that were serving in rural or underserved areas, but to mental health professionals. And so Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona contributed to that program and is supporting 16 people in that. But then looking farther, so working with the Be Connected program and some of those community partners that can increase access to those social determinants of health. So we've used that phrase. That's all the basic things you need to live. So housing, food, transportation. You can't care about your mental health and your diabetes if you're worried about where your next meal is coming from. So really supporting that and giving people the basics that they need to be able to achieve their optimal health.
Amazing. And I can't emphasize that enough, this idea of being able to think through, both the direct delivery of services, which you would typically think of inside of a hospital or a clinic, and then what those social determinants are outside, right? All of those things are going to impact whether or not you're seeking that care. And so figuring out how to organize both the community and the federal and state partners that we have in a way that's meaningful. And I dovetail right into Thomas, who just recently spoke at a congressional hearing to explain how the community works with the federal apparatus in order to drive some of these actions. Thomas, would you mind just talking about maybe what mental health reform looks like to you?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, Drew. And I mean, really, outstanding responses. I don't know that I can add a ton more to that. But if I were to break it down, it's really about, we're not having a conversation about mental health. We're having a conversation about, do you have adequate transportation? How's your living conditions? How many relationships do you have that are positive and supportive of what you're doing? How's your daily day going? Are you feeling satisfied? Do you have a connection to, something bigger than yourself? That's the real conversation. So mental health reform in a grassroots way is what we're all experiencing and the struggles that we have, and then how do we solve for those things. The wonderful point that was made a couple of times is there are a ton of resources out there. It's getting access to the resources, and that's what the Be Connected program and the VA and Department of Veterans Services and the Arizona Coalition for Military Families and ASU, and I can keep going. You guys get the idea. There's a ton of folks that are collaborating really effectively together to make it so that we're not lonely, we're not sad, we're not tired, we're not angry. We've got folks to talk to. We're engaged with life.
Thank you, Thomas.
You are smart.
You stopped eating crayons a decade ago, so on that note, I wanted to pivot to Shiloh, but aside from the challenges that we have, with COVID and all the complications that have been beset for the last 18 months, this was a difficult, topic for us to figure out how to solve anyway. It was arguably getting worse. So with the additional complication, which makes it significantly easier to deal with,
Absolutely.
I would ask, what are some of the biggest issues that you see for mental health for our veterans in your future?
So as I mentioned, I work specifically with transitioning service members, whether they served deployment or not. So our team, we see kind of the gamut of everything. So the social determinants of health, we're working with those veterans to figure out that next step. So while we do see that the diagnosable mental health conditions, the PTSD, depression, and anxiety, I think sort of the underlying that we're seeing with all of it is that connectedness. So that loss of connection, where I was served right next to my brothers and sisters. I lived with my best friend for years. I woke up, I knew exactly what I'm doing, and now I don't. So being able to address that new mission, that new purpose, what are your values, and really identifying what that is. So I think working with those veterans to identify what is important to me now, because if someone joined when they were 17, they were told up until that point what is important to them, whether they were raised in the church or school or with their parents. Those values were kind of given to them. And then in the military, everybody has those values that they've been following. They joined for a reason because they are in agreement with most of those values. And then now they get to decide what is important to them. What does that next step look like? So while we do address the mental health conditions, since you did ask what are the biggest ones, so PTSD, depression and anxiety, insomnia, sometimes the substance use, if we can't get those initial ones under wrap. I think the big thing is that connectedness, that mission, that purpose, and as Congressman Gallego talked about, that holistic approach, and everybody here has talked about, is that can we address those, the housing, the food, the employment, the relationship concerns, so that we can also then address the mental health issues that are being brought up. Did I answer
Absolutely, yeah, it's fantastic. And then Dr. Baker, in a similar vein, but as a continuation of that, I was going to ask, how do you help people overcome the shame about having mental illness to be able to talk to them about who and what people can help?
Well, I believe in keeping everything simple, and that's just through normalizing the mental health issues. We do a great job in this country of putting people in boxes, right? And what we have to understand that everyone is on a continuum, right? You're only one step away from having trauma. You're only one step away from being depressed. You know, when you look at, I grew up in Detroit, and I'm an Army veteran. And some of you guys that served in Afghanistan, Iraq, you know, you've been shot at. That's PTSD, right? Without a doubt. Well, guys, I was shot at 6 times living in Detroit before I even went in the Army, right? So just think about it. Your people next to you are living with trauma that they don't even recognize, right? This is normal. And we have to normalize these things so that we can accept everyone on the equal playing field. So through normalization, you can better get people to be part of a community and feel part of a community.
Absolutely. I'm going to pivot back to Thomas and to carry off of that, or piggyback off that, if you will. What are suggestions that you have for talking about suicide and mental health with people who still attach or see a stigma with this topic?
Okay. Yeah, wonderful question. Thank you, Drew. As far as the stigma is concerned, really what we're talking about, we all have it. We all have a certain stigma. You know, we all think things that are not fully aware, not fully connected. They're based on fear, anxiety. You don't want to be thought of anything, you know, perceptively less than a full, capable, wonderful human being. And the reality is that even with the most severe post-traumatic stress, you are still a wonderful, capable, amazing human being. So we've got to really challenge those beliefs. There's a wonderful kind of phrase out there that's floating around, and I hope it floats around a whole lot more. And that is that it's not what's wrong with you, but what happened that gets you to those types of behaviors. What happened in your past, or what is happening now, and that is going on for you, that is the reason why you're reacting and responding in this way. And that is a whole different mindset. And it's a really important mindset because it directly challenges the lack of understanding and the other various beliefs that support stigmas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To Wanda, I wanted to ask, and again, we're just going to continue to kind of like hammer on this point to some degree, but how do you connect with others that are considering suicide or have already lost somebody?
So it's sort of two different questions. All right, so considering suicide, we recognize, like we've all said, that there's probably some considerable trauma going on there, and it might not, it didn't happen yesterday. It's accumulation of trauma, and we don't want to be, you don't want to be afraid to address the situation. Someone was just giving an example. If somebody comes up to you and say, I want to commit suicide, I want to kill myself, that's a frightening statement to anybody. And how do you react to that? And so I think that the important thing is to understand the resources that are available. We've talked about Be Connected. There's a number and a website. You can call the number if there is anybody out there who sees a veteran struggling and needs instant help, they can call. And if it's a crisis, they will transport you right to the crisis line. We also have, obviously, the veteran crisis line that's available. Education and training, I think, is really important for those who have lost someone and for those who are dealing with someone who may have tried to commit suicide. We've already kind of talked about mental health first aid, but the Psych Armor has a series of education on mental health. Applied suicide intervention skill training, ASSIST training, is really great training. The Columbia training and the QPR are all a training that can help anybody kind of understand how to deal with and connect with people. Now, when someone has been lost to suicide and a family is trying to deal with that, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, I truly believe in, is a great program, and they support the family after something traumatic like that has happened. And so, like we've all said, there are plenty of resources out there to support those who are in a mental health crisis and are on the verge of trying to die by suicide. and as well as to help family members. But I just read this from someone who dealt with somebody who was super struggling, and they said, in the minute, you have to listen. If somebody comes to you and they say, I don't want to live anymore, you need to listen to that. Tell them that you want to hear their story. If you suspect something's already in action, like drugs have already been taken or alcohol, call 911. But if you don't suspect that, keep the conversation going. It's always an accumulation of things. And once they begin to maybe get through that portion and start to talk about a future, that's when you can really start to change the conversation that might be happening. Have no judgment. Start to ask questions to dismantle the plan they may have had to die by suicide. Assess the situation and help them to provide a better plan for living. Once they're safe, tell them that you love them. And then thank them for honoring you for talking to them. That's what we need to do when we see anybody struggling with mental health.
Unequivocally. Like that's the challenge, right? Is finding people in crisis. But if we get really good at this and we're successful at it, we'll be able to find people before they're in crisis, right? And that's the key, is figuring out, not trying to, stop something at the red line, but finding it when it's slightly yellow or turning yellow before it gets into the red, right? And so on that point, we've been talking about these social determinants. So I just want to kind of punt back over to Thomas around Be Connected and ask, how do we find, identify, service, treat, all of the above, people who are in emotional distress before they get to that red line?
We act as a family, we act as a community, and each and every one of us is responsible. There is literally no way that the VA, Department of Veterans Services, ourselves, anybody here on this panel, or anybody in this room can take care of the entire state's population. Each one of us has to do it. Part of our success at the Arizona National Guard, when we were able to drop the rate from its highest rate ever for 3 successive years to 0, is because we burrowed the training and the expectation down to the fire team level that they will check in with each and every one of their service members between drills. I guarantee there were folks that were supported during that period that ended up not dying by suicide, but ended up progressing and working through some of the issues that were plaguing them at that time. So that's why it's important that literally every veteran is working off the same page. The department and ourselves have a campaign this year, Connect Every Veteran. Really important, because that's the only way that we can do it. And all everybody has to know is a little bit of information. 1, there's resources, and which means hope. And 2, exactly what Wanda just did, and demonstrated love, care, and support for the individual, and walking alongside of them.
Absolutely. To zoom back out a little bit, Dr. Crist, I wanted to ask you, what are there clients, colleagues, and teams struggling with the most this year during COVID pandemic, and as they support clients with increased emotional distress?
So I think just like everybody has mental health. It's part of our just being a whole person, right? And so a lot of this, as healthcare providers and as frontline workers, have been, trying to help those who need help. They've had their own mental health challenges. I mean, feeling disconnected from their loved ones, feeling disconnected from their community, but the fear of still having to serve and provide, treat people with COVID. So there are there's a lot of struggles throughout the entire community as we look at COVID-19. And I think that underscores the point. All of us have mental health, just like all of us have physical health. And really what we need to do is integrate that from not only a healthcare perspective, but a community perspective, and look at treating the whole person. Because you can have great mental health days, you can have bad mental health days, just like you can have the flu one day and feel physically fit the next day. So recognizing that as part of, treating and working with the whole person.
Absolutely. wanted to punt over to Dr. Baker and just ask, how do we, on that note, how do we prepare for even more mental illness in the country this year?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. So, of course, I get that one. The problem is we talk about mental health today, but it only lasts one news cycle. Everything in this country lasts one news cycle. But everything we're talking about has been there since everyone came home from the military, right? The same depression issues, the same PTSD. Everything has been the same since World War II, even probably beyond. But we only let it last one news cycle. We have to keep it in front of us. I had a pathology teacher, Dr. Abrams at University of Michigan, who taught me, keep them on the horizon. As long as that person you're caring for is in your view, you remember them, right? They're your battle buddy. Everyone remembers battle buddies, right? They're your battle buddy. Keep them in front of you. If you let them outside your view, you will forget them. And then to educate the public. The medical community does a terrible job of not just educating our patients, but educating the public. And that's because we have so many fires to put out, that we're constantly trying to focus on many different things, but we have to be better at educating everyone to recognize when they see depression, when they see anxiety, when they see people who are at risk for suicide. And remember, we're all on a continuum, so we're all at risk. So identify your battle buddies and keep them on the horizon.
Couldn't agree more. And to the point that you were making earlier, with trauma that exists from the neighborhoods that you grow up in, the challenges, the increased challenge that only exists in a news cycle, it's Veterans Day, so pejoratively the country will have a conversation this week about it, and the following week we're back to whatever the topic of the week is, and we continue to kind of move on. And so, I guess maybe this is a question for the entire panel, which is, as these challenges don't seem to go away, but veterans are the most, I wouldn't say the most obvious, but they are the demographic of the population that people understand. They go through traumatic events, they get bonked in the head, they have these either emotional or physically traumatic events that cause an additional layer of help, and it becomes this, if we can solve the problem here, it can then matriculate to the rest of the public health domain. But this is going to require an army of people. So to the panel, the question is, what do we do with the shortage of mental health practitioners, clinicians, all of the above in order to serve a population that is now writ large country?
Well, I'll start since I have the mic to my face. First thing first is there is a shortage, and there will continually be a shortage because COVID has done an amazing thing to the medical field, and that has shown us that we have mental health issues as well. We get tired, we become anxious, we become depressed because we're dealing with completely stressful situations for the past 2 years. So that's number one. But number two, we have to equip our primary care doctors better so that they can recognize and be willing to treat some of these mental health issues when we can't get them in to see psychiatrists and counselors. Okay, and then that also goes to the faith-based community as well. We have to make sure that we educate our pastors, our bishops, our community leaders, and so that when we fail and when we get too full, there's somewhere that they can go. So we have to work as a community to fix this.
I'll jump on that one. To continue that we do our primary care providers, the mental health providers, I think it's everybody, providing education and support to everybody because as the Arizona Coalition for Military Families once said, there's no wrong door, right? We want to be able to open any door and that veterans can receive resources or support at whatever doormat they're standing on. So that's educating bartenders, that's educating servers, that's educating brothers and sisters, actual family brothers and sisters. I don't know how many times I come in on a Monday to work and my chief of social work says, hey, so I took a Lyft this weekend. And it's always, I met this veteran. The veteran was driving, and he has these questions. Will you follow up? She is there with her phone number and willing to hand it out to everybody. There's been many times I've taken lifts, and I see the hat sitting there on the door, or on the dash there. And I just bring up, oh, I see you're a veteran. Thank you so much for your service. Let them know I work at the VA. And then I ask questions, right? Do you have any questions? Is there anything that I can help connect you to? But providing those education and that resource, the assist training, making sure everybody is aware of that, gas attendants, Target store clerks, everybody, and teach them the signs, something to look for. Maybe somebody's not making eye contact. Just asking that question, hey, are you doing all right? But making sure that because we do have the shortage, and I think for a while we will continue to have the shortage. So making sure that everybody throughout the state, throughout the country, in whatever role you are playing, that you have the resources and some support for yourself to be able to provide that support.
So I and Thomas can speak to, our Be Connected program was designed to have navigators. And part of that also is having VA navigators, so that the transition for those veterans that can and are eligible for VA enrollment can be directed that way. But something that we don't talk about a lot is that 70% of our veterans are not enrolled in a VA facility. Now, there's very many more that are enrolled in for service and benefits, but for health care, it's about 30%. So what happens to the 70% that are out in the community? That's us. We have to help them. She mentioned, bus drivers and librarians and postal workers and the children's school teacher. And all of those people can have training that can make them navigators to know what to do when the time is needed, right? No wrong door, as she said. So I think it's really important that we do understand that, even though we want veterans to go to the VA, because that is the veteran healthcare system in my mind, there are a lot that don't, and we need to be sure that we are there for them and that we have the right resources for them.
I'll just say it's like voting in Chicago. You want to do it early and often, okay? So what we're experiencing with COVID is that there is a higher degree of severity. When we talk to the folks that are on our Be Connected support line and our navigators that are out in the community, even our career navigators that help folks get employment, they are all talking about the severity. There's a definite uptick in numbers of folks that are contacting and needing support, but it's the severity. And it's really important. It's almost like how we can help each other. If you're finding someone or you're yourself or struggling with something, go early. I guarantee, as a licensed professional counselor that has worked a lot of folks through a lot of stuff, it is far easier to work it early as opposed to later. The stuff gets entrenched, it's harder to dig out, it's more pain. Trust me, early is better. All right.
And then I would finally say there's something everybody can do. So social isolation, we identified that as a public health problem before COVID. COVID made that so much worse. And so one easy thing that you can do today is just to call somebody and start a conversation. Ask them how they're doing. You might actually reach them at a very, very critical time and you wouldn't even know it. So that would be my advice today. Go out and start a conversation with someone you love.
Agree across the board. And I just want to hammer that point home and emphasize what Wanda had said, which is 70% of veterans are enrolled in VA healthcare, right? So that's an us problem. That's not a them problem. That's everybody in this room, everybody in the community, that's an us problem. And figuring out how to solve that. And to Shiloh's point, when you imbue people with just an ability just to ask a question and direct, it becomes it's your smoking, drinking, shooting, fishing, hanging out buddy that's going to be the one who sees that something's wrong, that can sense something askew, and then hey, can I just ask you some questions? Can we go from there? But bigger picture too is operating this in a vacuum is a challenge, and so there becomes how do we layer all of the different efforts in a way that makes sense? And one of the things that would be great to see is how to connect, the healthcare system in and of itself. And so I wanted to point to Dr. Crist and ask, there is this conversation that we were beginning in the White House a couple of years ago about how you create, an insurance, bucket around social determinants of health as well as mental health. And so is there or has there been a change, or what can we be doing, I guess, broadly to figure out within the, insurance medical system to be able to, support it in that way? So that it's
Yeah, so navigating insurance is always difficult. So the one thing that we would say is make sure that you know and understand your benefits, both for physical health and mental health. And if you don't understand, call somebody at your plan to get those explained to you so that you understand. There are laws that require mental health services to be provided at no more restrictive than physical health services. And so we've been working at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona on the mental health parity and Jake's Law to make sure that our members have access to those services. We've also been working with our healthcare providers that are part of our network to make sure that they know how to connect their patients to in-network or providers that are also going to match what that individual's needs are. So we've started a program called Quartet so that providers can match, and it follows up and it quickly places them with a mental health provider, because if you have an appointment 6 weeks from now, that may not be soon enough. So getting them in very, very quickly. And then working to expand the access to that by having more mental health providers. So, getting more into the training pipeline, making sure that networks have an adequate network of mental health providers to treat.
Absolutely. Two more main questions, I think, for the entire panel. And this one isn't on here, but it's a question that I would be remiss if I didn't ask, which is a hot button to some degree, so I don't mean to put all of you in a hot seat. But this is a question that comes up constantly, right? And figuring out how to answer and navigate it is a challenge, which is, as you were talking about, firearm safety. And so there is an endless stigma with veterans, and probably the most preeminent one, which is if I say anything, if I do anything, I will be either kicked out of the military unit that I'm in, or I will never have access to firearms again. So I'm not going to talk about it. To the panel, I would ask, how do we demystify that for service members so that takes away that part of the stigma? Silence.
So I'll start by, it is definitely a difficult question in that when we start to talk about the Department of Defense as a whole, it's the largest federal government in our nation, VA being number 2. So they're so large, trying to make sort of legislative change or even sort of administrative change is very, very difficult. I think at least for veterans, it's a little easier in respect to, as a State Department, I can sort of create programs that can walk around those kinds of things. We have a program right now called Secure Your Weapon, which is part of the lethal means discussion, and it really talks about military tradition and keeping your weapon safe, right? Let's put a gun lock on. That gives you 2 minutes to really think about it before you actually unlock it and maybe do something we will regret later, right? So I feel like it's easier on the veteran side. I would hope that, like the doctor said, we could normalize this conversation even in the military where, the National Guard was a great example of that. They embedded communication so deep within their organization that no one was afraid to come forward to talk about the struggles they were having. If we could get the Department of Defense to sort of follow those same kinds of communication processes and programming, perhaps we could make some progress toward destigmatizing the ability to come forward for service members.
So I'm going to put my toe in this lava pit. So I had someone come to me with depression. She had depression. She had anxiety. And when I talked about getting her treatment, she goes, "Doc, I don't want treatment, and I don't want to be put on medicine." I said, "Well, hold it, time out. You recognize you have a problem, which is half the problem, but you don't want treatment." I said, "What's up with that?" She goes, "Well, I have guns. I have guns in my house. If you give me a diagnosis of depression, if you give me a diagnosis that requires me to be on medication, and I get treatment, I'm going to lose my guns." So I didn't know. So I looked it up, and there is some laws out there that would preclude people with certain diagnoses. The problem is those diagnoses are kind of nebulous and not evenly enforced. So it's really hard for me as a provider to tell anyone what will happen when I give them a diagnosis. But what I tend to do is tell them what will happen if I don't. I talk to them about what happens to untreated depression, what happens to untreated anxiety, you know, what the risk of suicide are, what the risk of those non-treatments are, and start a conversation with the person, and hopefully over time we can come to an agreement and work slowly towards treatment if we have to. So that's the best I can say.
I think from a command level, yes and yes. But from a, I think,
Come on, Marine.
there we go. All right, here we go. All right. From a command level, it's just incredibly important to have appropriate messaging. So in the National Guard, there was an actual policy that was put out that said you will not be kicked out of the Arizona National Guard if you come forward and have an issue that needs to be worked on. Turns out it's a mental health issue or whatever it happens to be. There was a great colonel in the Marines in Marine Corps Air Station down in Yuma, and Colonel Kukuk, and he had made similar statements like that to all of his Marines. It takes that, and it takes reinforcement of messaging. Now, some of the nice things that they did do is they said, when you're having a hard time, we're going to get together, we're going to have a conversation with your first sergeants and whoever, and then we're going to put your weapons, if you're okay with it, into the armory. They're going to be perfectly safe. They are yours, and you know, as soon as everything is good to go, then we'll get them back to you. You know, but that's a conversation that's happening with the service member, as opposed to we're going to take your guns away. And then he was able to communicate to other service members, you know what? They didn't take my stuff away. I've still got a job. I'm going to be able to continue with my career. That's how you start to do these types of things. But I think it takes, honestly, brave commanders to be able to do that.
Agree. Yes, I can tell you terrible stories. Whereas less than brave. So the final question, I guess, again to the entire panel is, you know, there's been a slew, and me coming from DC recently, having participated in it, you guys as well, just on a committee hearing, Thomas. Like, there's been a litany of, you know, legislation that's come down. There's funding that exists. There's programs that are out there. And in this kind of sea that turns into almost white noise for veterans who are struggling at the ground level, at the policy level, at the state level, you know, there are all these things that are happening. But how do we weave these things together? And or are there, as a second part of that question, are there any policy challenges that have yet to be resolved that still could be resolved? So how do we bring the mountainous amount of programs that are being done, the funding that's done, to make a cohesive program for those that are on the ground? And then big picture, is there anything left that needs to be overturned?
Okay, well, I would in part refer to my remarks that I made just a couple of days ago to the Senate. I made a very strong pitch that there needs to be an organization like the Arizona Coalition for Military Families that works directly with the state and the various departments of Veteran Services, the governor's offices, the VA. It's a thing called a Collective Impact Initiative. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's very interesting to see how you solve incredibly complex problems. It is a very good answer to the struggles that we're all experiencing. If you go to other states and you talk to them, they're having the same conversations. The difference is that they don't have a cohesive team of individuals with ASU and everybody else that's working together collectively and collaboratively in order to be able to solve the problems. Problems are difficult. Problems are hard. That's why they haven't been solved yet. And no one organization can do that. The VA has said that a bunch of years back, and we've all benefited because they took that attitude. It's a fantastic way to go, and I encourage more people to take a look at it and fund it. And there are ways of funding it that are already on the books. They just need to do it. Thank you.
You know, when AP asked me to do this, I didn't know I'd be sitting for another exam. I literally feel like I'm taking another MCAT here, but the problem in medicine in general is that we're so siloed and so only looking at what's in front of us. Again, only looking at what's on our horizon, that we have not increased our sphere of influence. So, I am responsible for 2,200 practices in this country, 2,200 provider practices. And I really can't give you a number of where I could send my veterans for help. It's because we don't talk, and it's my fault, as much as anyone else's, that I don't reach out and ask that question. So I think we have to be more, again, of a community, not just us as a community, but the medical community needs to be a better community and stop working in these silos.
And I think one of the things that's missing is the resources and funding to really address preventative services and how do you address these issues early on. So a lot of money in healthcare is going to the actual healthcare, but when you look at the impact that actual healthcare has on your overall well-being, it actually only accounts for about 10% of all of the things that make up your total health. So what we need to do is shift some of those programs and those resources to early identification and prevention programs so that people can be identified early and we can save them from a whole host of bad outcomes by addressing them early on.
Yeah, I would just say, to your point, it's almost kind of like how we have wildfire season, right? Where you do a lot of brush clearing ahead of time so you can try to knock down the amount of wildfire you're going to have. It's really hard to fight it when the entire forest is on fire. It's hard to mount resources. It's similar, right? You can't find a person in crisis always and solve it there. You need to find way upstream and be preventative, and it becomes this empowerment in the community. Sorry.
Okay. So one thing that we addressed today was just the lack of providers, and I think that's a huge thing. So working at the VA on the ground level, we get to hear a lot of bills, and there's a new one, HR 8247, that I was asked about while I was presenting once recently, about a week ago. I hadn't been briefed on it, so I did some research, but it talks about part of it that that impacts my team directly is that a transitioning veteran can identify 10 people to receive information about benefits. So these things are amazing. The legislation, the bills that are coming down from DC are phenomenal. I think what is missing, and this is the view and opinion of Shiloh Catlett as an individual person, is the people, right? So all of this is adding great, wonderful resources and the ability to connect to more veterans than we ever have before, and our team remains the same size. And then there was the mental health, the executive order for transitioning service members with mental health, that if a transitioning service member is not eligible for VA health care, part of that 70%, they don't meet that eligibility requirements, but they will be eligible for 1 year of mental health after their discharge date. Not a lot of people know about that, right? I'm sure lots of people in this room had no idea that that existed, right? Okay. We have a lack of mental health providers to provide that. So again, we are being able to connect to a lot of those veterans that we've never been able to connect to before because they're not eligible for VA health care, but they have that 1 year, but we're not being given more providers. Again, this is Shiloh Catlett's soapbox as an individual person. So I think the ideas and everything that's coming down, this is my DC up here, is wonderful and amazing, and we need to be doing it. And we need the people to actually be doing it on the field, on the ground level. Shiloh Catlett. As an individual.
So I'll close out the question.
Yeah.
So you were talking about sort of grassroots and then also at a much higher level. And, as a department, the governor has given me a lot of flexibility and adaptability. And we've recently done some very grassroots work in showing up at Walgreens, Safeway, CVS, and putting a table up outside the door like the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts, and just handing out information. Everybody goes to the grocery store. And we recognize that out of the 500,000 veterans that are in this state, we probably have access to about half of them. A lot of them live in Maricopa, 52% approximately. 25% live in Tucson, but the rounding of that is in all of these rural areas. So going to Douglas and Bisbee and Eloy and setting up outside of the grocery store and doing grassroots work to educate veterans and their families is where it starts at the base level. And then we put those navigators on those people we meet when we find that they're struggling with people. Then we move up to what other problems do you have, when we use our Be Connected program to address all the other social determinants that they have, because it's not just one issue, it's always an accumulation of issue. And then it's incumbent upon me or my department to deal with VSOs and help them understand legislative agendas and advocate for them. I work with our governor to also work on legislation. I try to see our senators fairly regularly to comment on whatever they're working on. And then I try to be a presence at the VA regularly at the headquarters so that I can talk directly with the secretary and the deputy secretary on the issues I see. I'm a big advocate for women veterans because I think they've done a dismal job in our healthcare. And so I'm always stamping my feet about that kind of stuff. But I feel like that's how we escalate all the way up to the top and do the work that has to be done to get some of these gaps filled for veterans.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. And this is what is made abundantly clear, right, is that this is a community effort. This is all of us together working together. It's not just one organization. It's a tapestry of everybody, the VSOs, state agencies, insurance, the VA itself, the community providers, right? It's this amalgamation of all of us working together. So on that, I want to say thank you to the entire panel. You guys were amazing today, and thank you for answering all your questions, and a round of applause for them, guys. Hand it back to Art. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Incredible panel. Great job. As we celebrate this Veterans Day season, it is abundantly clear that we have a room full of people who have demonstrated a willingness, if necessary, to put their lives on the line to preserve the freedom we enjoy. What may become a larger challenge is for all the people of the country, rather than just saying, when you see a veteran, thank you for your service, but to make a determination because of that service, we're prepared every day to live to make this a better place. That's the energy that is necessary for real change. That's the energy that I feel in this room from those of you who have given your service. I simply believe, and my dad, I'll end with this, I shouldn't talk about this, but my dad was, everybody called him Sarge, fought in World War II, the Army Air Corps. And what he taught us was that too great a price had been paid to make sure that the freedoms we enjoy were secure, just to do good enough. So he pushed his children toward excellence. I'm probably the only one of the 12 who failed, but that's okay. But the reality is we ought to every day, not just merely thank those of you who have served, but demonstrate by our service back to the country every day. We appreciate the ability that we have because of the freedom bought with your sacrifice, with your risking of your lives, and with every day and everything you do, striving to make it better for all of us. I salute you all on behalf of all the folks who are here and all the folks who are watching us. Everyone wants, let everybody know that find yourself a veteran, put your arm around them, thank them for what, in fact, they have risked and given to this country, but more importantly, every day you live, waste not 1 minute in degradation of the freedoms that have been purchased at the price of blood and treasure and lives lost, both physical and otherwise. God bless you all. God bless the United States of America, and may we always make it better by our own sacrifice.